Is it starting now? Is it actually?
I think we're in.
That was a rockin' intro.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Larry Harris. I'm the features editor of the Nib, and I'm talking to you today from Canberra, the Australian National Capital. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm meeting you on today, the Ngunnawal people, and honour their elders past and present. I'm here with Matt Bors, the editor and founder of the Nib, who is in some random small town in Canada on the land of the Anishinaabe people. Matt Lubchansky, the Nib's associate editor, and Nib contributor Nicolo Pizarro, who are both in Queens, New York City, and Chelsea Saunders, who I forgot to check, I believe is in New Jersey.
No, New York Pride.
Okay, because that means you're all on the land of the Lenape people. We want to thank the Museum of Wisconsin Art for organising this lovely panel on the internet. We were meant to be doing this in person in June at the DNC in Milwaukee on the traditional lands of the Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk and Menominee. But hey, it's 2020. It's been quite a year, didn't quite plan out. We would like to honour the Indigenous caretakers of all these lands and waters, the elders who lived here before, the Indigenous today and the generations to come. For those of you in Milwaukee, MOA have an exhibition on right now called Wisconsin Funnies that's showing off a lot of fun cartoons from their collection until January 10th, 2021. I'm really sad that I can't actually go and see that show because it looks pretty awesome. So go do that if you're there in real life. So some background on us. The Nib is an online and print publication publishing political cartoons and long-form non-fiction comics. And we're gathered here in cyberspace, I guess, to talk about contemporary editorial cartooning. So I want to kick off with something from the Wisconsin exhibition here. I'm going to open this. Oh, wait. Where is this? This isn't open. I want this one. This is not, it's not actually working. Let me see if it works. That's annoying. Let me check this out. We did this like 2 seconds before this started. And now, for some reason, it's not working. Share screen. Application window. Here we go. All right. So in front of us all here, we have the cover of the very last issue of The Bugle by Dennis Kitchen. So I want to get someone on this panel to describe it for me. Chelsea, can you tell me what you see in this drawing here?
Yes, so I see the Bugle, who looks pretty rough, saying, "The hell with it, you fight him." And he's saying it to John Q. Public. And behind both of them are Pandora's box of characters. I think my favorite might be the old bats and the crazies, spelled with an S backwards.
I'll tell you another really good.
Yeah. So this cover, I guess, is depicting a protest against the existence of the underground newspaper, The Bugle, which was based in Milwaukee. The Bugle published a bunch of cartoonists, indie comic stuff, some quite political, I guess, at a time when there was a lot of protesting happening in the 1970s. And Kitchen syndicated these cartoons to other student and indie newspapers. So it's kind of part of a prelude to the indie street press, who published Matt Bors, and other indie political cartoonists whose work have formed the initial basis for the Nib, folks like Tom Tomorrow, Jen Sorensen, I guess Emily Flake. And so obviously protests and cartoons about protests continue, but editorial cartooning has changed a lot since then. We have far fewer print publications of staff cartoonists in 2020 than we did in 1978. And publication ceasing to print is not really a newsworthy event anymore, even. People don't tend to label things like this, I guess, either. So Matt Bors, can we talk about this as a cover image for a magazine? Like, how would you feel with this running on the last ever issue of the Nib?
Well, I think we'd probably do something a little different, you know. As we are not we do not favor label heavy comics, but it's kind of funny and doesn't seem to be taking itself too seriously, like a lot of the old style editorial cartoons that label everything.
Well, Chansky, you're pretty discerning when it comes to political cartoons. What do you make of this particular number?
I mean, I feel like it's so important to analyze these like in context. So like at the time, this was not like a completely tired way to do a political cartoon. Also, I think like even for the time, like it's drawn so differently than most. It's not like overly crosshatched. It's not like the labels are also very funny, and they remind me more of like Art Young labels than they do like your Thomas Nast labels.
Yeah.
Or like, and it's also about like, I think so much of this is about like, oh, like it's not a protest against the publication existing. It's not like regular people. It's like, oh, old bats who hate funniness and big business and apathy and like full on insane people who have eyeballs in their palms.
Those are the same enemies. These same enemies.
Yeah, this exactly. For everybody else, do you guys hate it when you wake up in the morning and there's a big guy with a club when he's wearing a shirt that says corruption? He's knocking on your door and he's trying to get inside.
That's my every waking
every
moment.
morning. I hate it. It's my favorite part about being a cartoonist. I label corruption.
It's funny. Like I actually know that labeling is looked down on, but I don't hate it all the time. I really don't. Like I think it's used well here because it would be hard to kind of like, I don't know, squeeze all of these abstract ideas otherwise, into such a small space. But
I think it feels almost like cheeky here in a way.
Yeah.
Maybe, Chelsea, you can pioneer as the younger generation. 2020 it's like bringing them back. Like the old recent cartoons now are like old. People who were doing those cartoons in the 90s, like Tom Tomorrow, and then like my generation was like, oh, that's like a great way to do. And now we're older, and people will be looking at our cartoons in like 5 and 10 years and be like, where's the labels on these?
Evolution.
I mean, that's kind of where
I have to say,
are going.
The ones at the back that say like phony liberals and pseudo hippies, that kind of made me think a little bit about like some of Nicolo's cartoons of late about people having particular behaviors that maybe. So I'd like to see some of your hipsters labeled in your next cartoon lot, Nicolo.
Sure, yeah. I'd love to, I don't know. I really like this one actually because there's a lot of nice detail and just good like contrast with the labels themselves. It's not just like labeling for no reason. I think I saw one from a cartoonist who will not be named that like it was clearly a bar of soap, but it still said soap on it. I don't know, just things like that.
I love that though. Clever.
All right, well, let's look at this next cartoon I have here, which is Corporate Crime Comics. It is a Corporate Crime Comics #2, sorry. It's another kitchen publication from Peter Poplaski. So, like, what can we see here? Nicolo, what do you see in this cartoon? We were just talking to you.
Yeah, just a lineup of some goons and a bunch of different people who I assume are like affected by them. There's like a person with like I can't tell if that's like a cast or like just the way the person's hand looks.
It could be a cast, surely, or a mummy.
Yeah,
Well, be a mummy.
or a mummy.
I believe.
But yeah, I'm assuming these are the people who are affected by all of these corporate goons and all of their crimes, and that police officers are kind of just like checking off all the things that they've done.
The cop looks sad. The cop looks like he's on the side of the corporate crime. I don't know. That's just the vibe I get.
I love this stuff because I'm a sucker for like comic book parodies, and like this calls back to EC like crime comics, and I think Dick Tracy too, because it's the corporate lineup of these guys are tax avoidance, pollution, unsafe products. That's what they all represent. My criticism would be that it's trying to do like the Dick Tracy villain thing, which is like they're all super cool looking and weird, but they need to have like look more like the thing that they are. I don't know how that would work. Pollution. The guy's got to have like a smokestack coming out of his
Right.
Yeah,
I did a cartoon like that a long time ago. I mean, it was probably, I guess it must have been the 2008 election, and I did all the GOP primary candidates as like Dick Tracy villains.
That's dope.
The one was like one was like border wall face, and had like a cement wall like running around, and I forget the other ones, but it was fun to draw.
And then it never came up again.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, that's the thing, right? So this one, corporate crime, I liked this one because it made me think a lot about, I've been obsessed with the Trump Incorporated podcast, because corporate crime is like, synonymous.
I'm low.
Yeah. But like, I realized that there's just so many like shocking and dramatic things happening with Trump. We've talked about this previously in other things, like that you can't get all of the crimes every single day with editorial cartoons, and like you have to pick your buzz. So this is where I'm going to get nerdy and ask you guys, like, what is it about a particular thing that strikes you that makes you want to do a cartoon about it? Because there's so many things out there with Trump.
That's a really good question. I'm just gonna throw something out there and say that usually I get the urge to make a comic when I'm super pissed about something, and maybe I'm reacting that way because it's close to home, or it's affected my family, or there's like policies that are just personal to me. So that's usually when I get the itch to draw something, and for me it's like a little bit cathartic. And also I kind of just like ragging on people when they goof up. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Trump's crazy, but there are like some things I feel like are more like absurd than others. Like I remember the Space Force. I think I was working with you, Matt Bors, on that. Like we both had a Space X or whatever comic, or whatever, Space Force comic, like at the same time. So yeah, that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I think I agree in terms of like I feel really motivated when I'm extremely pissed off at something, or if it hits close to home, like like trans issues or stuff about like, I don't know, like I'm really into like like labor is very important to me. But then there's a certain cast of people that I would like that are more interesting to me than others. Like Trump is becoming less and less interesting to me as a person to make fun of, because it's sort of like, where the hell do you go? But like I will always make fun of Ted Cruz because he's also very fun to draw, because he's very gooey, and I like to draw a nice goo thing.
A nice goo guy.
A nice goo man. Yeah, if there's like an opportunity for me to draw some goo or like a skeleton, I'm completely on board, and I'll immediately go there.
It reminds me of the comic artist Ellie Valley, who just draws just goo.
It's a lot of goo. It's like wood, but it's like exquisitely rendered woodcut goo.
Yeah, his Trump has become like Tetsuo at the end of Kira. It's just like this.
It started out pretty bad, but I feel like his Trump is actually deteriorated over time. Is that just me?
No.
Yeah.
I think
in the sense that it's improved over time, but what you mean is that Trump's form has deteriorated. I mean, I think every cartoonist, in my Trump for sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of everybody. You just sort of, you start exaggerating more over time, making him ugly, and he's such a, he has such a weird physical presence, and he's such a detestable person. You just want to draw him like more gross.
I feel what kept happening with me is I didn't want to look up reference photos anymore, because I just don't like looking at the man. So I just started looking at my old drawings for reference photos. So I started iterating on the things that I was just doing. So it's like an AI generated Trump at this point.
I thought you were going to say you were just like drawing from a still life of mashed potatoes.
I mean, yeah, like I basically just kind of draw like a weird, like it's at this point very, very far from how he looks, and I don't really care.
Valley Valleys is like is a total abstraction. At this point, but it's like this really. I mean, you know, the only thing good about Trump winning re-election would just be to see where the hell his drawing of Trump would be in 4 years.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of curious.
I actually find it super interesting because I feel like obviously at the beginning, like Trump was easy to draw about. Like I obviously really wanted to like cover a lot of the atrocities that he did. But I found that like, and this is just me, but like over the closer it got to this election, to the 2020 election, there was so much hypocrisy as well from just corporate Democrats as well. And I just didn't necessarily want to turn a blind eye to that. And I think it's always good to kind of have a balance of like the obvious, which would be Trump is bad. But then on the other hand, focus like on, okay, but sometimes like corporate Dems are just as terrible. So I don't know. I think it's just important, I think, for like political cartoonists to call out hypocrisy on both sides.
Yeah, I think I was kind of I've been going down that route of just like kind of calling out Democrats and stuff, because to be honest, like Trump, all this, any news with Trump has just like overwhelmed me to the point that I'm just like, I don't even know like if I can write something about this. But like when the supposed opposition party's job is like, so it's so the bar is so low, it's so easy to just you could easily say anything to be better, and they managed to not do that a lot.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Like I remember 2 instances where I think Trump has said like so many racist things. I can't even like pick one. I can't even remember one. But I remember when like Biden said a racist thing, and I was like, I'll remember, this is burned in my memory forever. Like, I just expected better. So like when you're disappointed from someone, then I think it hits you harder. And like what Nicola was saying, like it's easy to like, I don't know, be more upset at a party that's supposedly like better, you know?
When they're out here hugging Lindsey Graham and like saying Amy Coney Barrett is cool, and like, yeah, like the literal Democrat voter approval rating of her went up like 20 points in the last week or something. And I wonder if that has anything to do with Dianne Feinstein being like, good job, and like hugging Lindsey Graham about it. I don't, you know, it's not a, yeah. It's not really about cartooning. I'm just mad about it.
No, but that translates into your cartoons, because I feel like it's like rage, right? So like for me, like this corporate crime comics thing, this is like, there is this list. I'm still mad about all of these things on this list. I don't even know what year this comic came out in, but I'm still pissed about. I'm pissed about tax avoidance and like big corporations not paying taxes. I'm pissed about pollution. I don't know about unsafe food products. That's not a thing that I'm necessarily that concerned about these days. But like bribery, yeah. Unsafe.
There's a lot of unsafe. There's a lot of unsafe food products. Even still, all I think about is like the extra hormones in like meat and dairy that are totally unnecessary.
Yeah, we're definitely trending backwards on that.
Yeah. Are you going to be mad about that enough to like do a comic about it though, Chelsea?
No.
I want to know what happened to the mummy guy, because if I was the mummy, I would be mad enough about being turned into a mummy that I would do a comic about that probably.
Nah, that's a cast from a person who was a victim of a unsafe work environment. That's
okay.
Or false advertising. Just this product did not work.
I'm trying to look at the one hand. Is the one hand has like fingers cut off from like
it looks like it.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Work
I didn't even notice that. Oh, that's gross.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's like a shade. Oh yeah, because the hand behind is like shaded in.
Yeah.
I got some critiques for the art on this one.
Yeah, pretty much there's a line, there's a tangent line through those two fingers, which makes you not realize that that's it. Yeah, okay.
It was the 70s, it was before they invented tangents.
Yeah.
I didn't know about it yet.
If I was editing this comic, that would probably be some art direction I would throw in there. All right, so let's move on to the next comic. So this is one I want to talk about in relation to a lot of our work here. This is a single panel from Will Elder and Harvey Kurtzman's Goodman Beaver series. It's basically a wasteland. I think it's a riff on Beer Street and Gin Lane by William Hogarth. Are you guys familiar with that? Those prints from like 1751 or something? No. Okay. So in this comic, I'll just describe what's happening here. We've got some I guess some cops being beaten up by some white hooligans here. We got some swastikas being painted on a sign. There's like a rat being dropped out of a window, and like a dude being tied up to a telegraph pole who's holding a sign that says "The world is coming to an end for me." And this dapper-looking chap is walking down the street here saying, what a day for a picnic. It's good to be alive. Some people look at life and they think it's all gloom and doom, but it's all in their minds. Amazing how people fool themselves."
I love this cartoon.
I like this, except for the part where the cops getting beaten up by a horde of people. I think that's good.
Oh wait.
I also really enjoy that one of the stores in the back just says pants. It's just a pants store.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, just pants. Where do you go to get pants? I go to the pants outlet. It's in a brownstone for some reason.
Yeah. This one is super weird. Like there's like things like there's like a sign in the back there that has a little eyeball that says English spoken here.
Oh, that's cool. Oh.
The Mertz family fallout shelter, keep out, and they're like in a little drain there. I don't know. So it's basically a wasteland comic, which we're pretty familiar with. And I wanted to like use this as like a chance to move into, we have an anthology that's just come out called The Wasteland. And I want to get Matt Bors and Matt Lubchansky in here like right now to talk about our wasteland and the Nibs cinematic universe.
Sure.
Yeah. Me and Lubchansky I don't remember what year it started. Fairly early in the Trump administration, I guess, started just riffing on dystopian themes. And first there was like kind of Trump guard soldiers that had gold helmets and looked like Judge Dredd soldiers. And then, ultimately after Mad Max Fury Road came out, I started drawing Trump in like a Morton Joe with like ironically a face mask respirator thing that, having not known that he would eventually need it, but not all my drawings and all my Trumps, but I sort of increasingly started drawing this dystopian stuff because it's a lot of my, childhood influences is like time travel, time traveling soldiers, robots, Mad Max dystopian stuff. And it's a lot more fun to draw than, guys wearing suits and just being talking heads in the small amount of space you usually have in a political cartoon. So it's kept me kind of creatively engaged in doing this stuff through these years. And also it's like everything that's happening is so bad and so hard to exaggerate. You have to really jump forward and make the world even worse to sort of have a satirical look on what's going on.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about this comic a lot. I just feel like it's very interesting to show the point of view of this artist is clearly pretty far to the right of where I'm at in terms of the filth of the city and the cops and the English spoken here and stuff. And I just think it's interesting to see what little details come out, but he's still mad about Nazis, which is, anyway.
Yeah.
But in terms of the wasteland stuff for the Nib, yeah, I think it's kind of twofold for me, where it's at once it is at some point keeping myself interested, and because it's again we've become everything's so cyclical. My entire life, the last 40 years of politics, it's been the same shit over and over and over and over. We're still mad about the same stuff we are from basically when they recalibrated how the state functions in the 80s. And everything's just sort of iterating worse and worse every time. So it's at some point you run into things to say about how we are being too cruel to each other, right? And also, and then the other part, and it's fun to draw the wasteland stuff because you can draw really wacky stuff. You can it's really nice to draw a wasteland background because it's just a straight line, which I like. But like, and then the other part is like, at some point, like it's hard to. There's a lot of talk of like reality outpacing satire, which is on some level true. So like, how do you make things more absurd than reality as it currently exists, and all you're left with is to like extrapolate into the future? So me and Boris have like at some point we like figured out the next 60 years of American history straight through like water wars and like we conquer Canada. We got another disease comes through. Trump dies. We're taken over by intelligent fly people. We got a whole timeline already set up. I think
we were doing the flies before the meme too, so don't come at us.
Yeah, we can't do that anymore. It's got to be a new insect.
Yeah.
Flies are done.
Can I just bring up the fact that I love the recurring characters in the Wasteland comics you guys do? Like Gorm.
Yeah.
He's bae.
The mascot at this point.
Well, I also, I realized, I think I was writing commentary for the Greetings from the Wasteland book, and I was saying that, Gorm is usually with this woman who I named Tinsel. She doesn't have as much name recognition as Gorm, but her name's Tinsel. She has like a robot arm and stuff. And sometimes they're like clearly a couple, and sometimes they're bad, and sometimes they're like good. They're just sort of like stand-ins for like everyday people in this world. So the canonical explanation in my mind is just that there's, they go in and out of these different modes of whether they're together or whether Gorm is like a bad leader of something, or if he's just like an innocent everyday guy who's a mutant.
They're practicing ethical non-monogamy, Matt.
Yeah. Gorm is an ethical slut for sure. But they all it is to say is that there's just a lot more Wasteland tales to be told to explain how on earth this how they inhabit all those different roles.
Are you hinting at a spin-off of a romantic Wasteland series? Just kidding.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do if Joe Biden wins. In regards to that stuff. Obviously, I don't think the world will magically get better, and the longer term stuff like climate change will just still be there. But I mean, if Trump wins, I don't even know. I don't even know how I'm gonna. We're not gonna entertain it.
Well, so this cartoon here, this is Will Elder's, I guess, idea of like a really terrible, like the worst case scenario, like the worst like street setting. And so there's like, stuff about like nuclear testing and, very of the time, I suppose. What would a version of this look like in 2020 for you guys?
Well, you'd still have the Nazis for sure. Matt brought up the cops. You wouldn't have the people. Well, maybe you would have,
It would be cops harassing a.
Yeah, I mean,
it would be.
If you wanted to draw like Antifa going at a cop or something, but and you didn't like that. But I mean, I would probably be drawing cops beating up a protester.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, like any scene from a protest that's happened like this year, if you just drew that scene with like tear gas and even the stuff that was like happening in Hong Kong earlier, and even the stuff in Nigeria that's happening, like I would just lump everything together and then draw that shitty image.
We're also missing like a collapse of infrastructure. So like instead of the people in the sewer, it'd be like overflowing storm drains and stuff from like increasing superstorms and hurricanes. Wildfire smoke.
Climate change would have to be present in some way, surely.
Yeah. A lot of wildfire smoke when like
orange skies.
Oh yeah. When it smelled like smoke here in New York because of wildfires on the West Coast, that was cool. Cool and normal.
Bad.
Yeah.
Sounds very bad. Nikolai, what would your wasteland look like?
Oh my gosh, I think I don't know. Everyone already said some pretty good stuff. I do know for a fact though that guy in the middle would probably just be the same. Maybe somebody like not wearing a mask or something.
Yeah.
I just like. I mean, when I first saw this, I wasn't even looking at the finer details, but like just this person in the center, I was just like, oh, I've seen this I've seen this person walking around Queens or like other parts of the city, just like being like that, kind of ignoring everything going around them. Yeah, I don't know what else I could add.
The person in the center kind of reminds me, there was like that famous like photo that was making the rounds of like the BLM protests on one side of the street, and then on the other it's like just people brunching. And and I just feel like that guy in the middle is, I mean, I love brunch, but he's that bruncher.
Yeah, that is after the last 6 months. That's like every photo on the camera roll of my phone is me taking pictures of people brunching as in like at protests and things. It drives me fully nuts. I was like, we were at one the other day, and people were walking by and like pointing and laughing. I was like, yeah, fucking hilarious, guys. Like as they were like going out, like I was in Flatiron in Manhattan, which is like Midtown-ish, and like people were just like going into restaurants and like laughing at a protest on the way in, while like there was like literally more cops than protesters out, like 10 feet away from us, and people are just like, haha, very funny, you care about stuff. It was very weird, and that
is so weird.
Like the snickering brunch people for sure.
That's when you should like slowly, like, don't do anything to them, but it's like slowly swarm and then like just back off.
I mean, yeah. It's like, I don't know how to engage with those people, because there's like, there was that horrible video from like DC earlier in the summer of like a bunch of protesters like going and yelling at the people at brunch, and I'm like, I don't know if that's the best way to engage people who aren't engaged right up to that. But at the same time, I sure would like to yell at the brunch people very much.
I mean, who doesn't want to yell at the brunch people? Except in Australia, where there's not as many protests and brunch is pretty normalized. But what I guess I wanted to also like ask you guys about changes in art styles, because we've looked a lot at these. This is very inside of baseball, but we've looked at like a few cartoons here that were done in pretty traditional styles of the time, like back then. And I would argue that one of the things that the Nib really does is has a very like the artists that are published with the Nib have much more contemporary art styles than a traditional editorial cartoonist. Can I get each of you guys to talk a little bit to that for me? No.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess for me, it's sort of like this art style is so old. It's also based in like print costs. So like we like to have color because it's online and people like color, and there's no reason to not have it.
Yeah.
Unless you're like a really super gifted black and white artist, which is like a different thing when we're talking about online art. But then like, I think it's important to keep changing with the times, especially with political cartoons. If you're going to have them, they should reflect the times more. So you should have contemporary art. You should have better representation in who's making the cartoons. Mm-hmm. It should be about a more diverse set of topics. It should have more viewpoints, specifically like viewpoints that have been kept out of, say, newspapers and things. So I think that's really important. It's sort of like a little synecdoche of like why, of like, just having the art style is like just a small piece of like trying to make a more contemporary publication.
Yeah. I always feel like there was an idea, I think, right up until relatively recently of what a political cartoon should look like. Like there was like a particular style that should be addressed. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed seeing over like the last 15 years, I guess even, is like there's been a shift away from that, where it's like, oh, any like art style that you want to have can actually be used in a way that is, like addressing political issues in a cartoon. And I don't know, like I think of like a lot of the styles of the people that we publish at the Nib as being like sort of informed as well by like animation and by like web comics and things like that. There's like a different like take on that, and everyone's style is individual, but it's been influenced by things outside of the editorial cartooning sphere.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one reason why people have the style, like all of us here, like the political cartoonists, usually draw in like clean lines, flat colors. Some of that is just economical too. Like, I mean, we have Wacom tablets and Photoshop now, and you have to do everything yourself, and it makes it easier to do. But like this drawing, I mean, how long did this take? You got to get paid a lot to make that. And a lot of these, actually, the styles we're looking at here, they're sort of more in line with like '70s underground comics, and a lot of good pen work, like Robert Crumb, and actually there's this editorial cartoonist who passed recently, Ron Cobb, who's super good. And they were working in black and white, and I mean, they weren't all making good money, but like they just spent a lot more time at the drawing table. Like, this to me reminds me of Mad Magazine more than anything. Like traditional editorial cartoons in the '70s and '80s were even more homogenized. Like, a lot of the guys who were working then and are still working now, like the older guys, their styles sort of slowly became a little bit more unique. But like back then, I mean, really, people were like really copying Jeff McNally and Pat Oliphant to a severe degree. Like, it was like, that was just the style of an editorial cartoon, was like these two guys, and then everyone else sort of copied them. So like, to me, this is definitely like not what a lot of modern cartooning looks like, but even this is way outside of the, that kind of cartooning.
Well, it's pulling into like I think there was, I think that the indie, those cartoons from the underground in the 1970s influenced the way that a lot of people drew things, or the way that a lot of people expected cartoons to look. And like the Bugle was obviously publishing cartoonists from that vein. So they were doing political style cartoons, but in like an underground style, and that, like, I don't know. I think that people from the outside world tend to look at political cartooning as like, it's a thing in this box, and this is what it looks like, and this is what it does. But there's just been so many different ways that it's shifted over time, and the way it's shifted right now, and specifically what we do at the Nib, is like all influenced by all these other different art things that are going on. That sounds so.
I will say that. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I will say, looking at this image, though, it makes you want to be better at cross-hatching. It's just a lot. And I feel like I never have cross-hatching in my stuff, like, ever. I think I did it once, and I was like, nah, this took me way too long. And it's so hard to do digitally. It is so hard to, like, I was talking to, I think his name, Kevin Callagher. Yeah, he does stuff for The Economist, and I was talking to him just because his style is very, very detailed. He uses a lot of cross-hatching, and like, I'm low-key obsessed with like how he draws, and I just don't draw that way. And I feel like, I'm kind of happy that there's been this shift, because it would have taken me God knows how many years to like get up to this level of illustration. Like, it's insane to me.
I love that. Look at the guy's jeans. That effect is super cool. That looks like only cartoonist I can think of who still does that is Jim Woodring.
Yeah.
This is definitely it's all, there's cross hatching, but I mean, it's not really like, there's a lot of those old school editorial cartoons that are making all their shading with like cross hatching, and this is, I don't know, this is like slightly. It's like,
look at the backs of the jackets of the punks on the left hand side with the skull and crossbones, like kind of like out in the cross hatch. It fucking rules. Sorry for swearing. I don't know if we're keeping this family friendly, but I love that a lot.
Yeah, and that, I can't tell if there's a line around it or not, but they could have whited it out.
Yeah. But it chose to make it more complicated.
I definitely, like, when I was first learning at a cartoon, like, took a inking class at the School of Visual Arts, like at night, from like an old school, like very underground comics with an X guy named Tom Motley. And he like made us do all this stuff. And I really, really loved it. But it was like, it would take me 3 hours to ink a panel.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't have, comics doesn't pay that well anymore. And I'm very sorry, Tom, who still does the work with that, and he's great. But like, yeah, I just can't.
I'm kind of interested in like, honestly, I've been interested in like the shift political comics could take even more, where I would love to do this if I had time, but just kind of experiment with more animating like individual panels even, especially because everything is now shifting to Instagram and like websites and stuff like that. So I think there's so many cool things you could do just like on an animation side.
You got that great comic you did for us last year with the Joe Biden goggles
Oh yeah.
that I found again the other day when I was looking for something else, and it's like this old couple putting on goggles to look at Joe Biden, but there's this great animation in the third panel where like you see the goggles like go on the face of the viewer and it changes what's happening in the. It's really cool and it came out really great.
Thank you. I would just love to keep pushing that, and I think like there's just such a big I don't know. I just think like people would love it, and yeah, I don't know. It's endless. Like you could do so many things now that like we're not confined to just print.
Yeah, well, that's the big thing, right? Nicola, you said you wanted to say something there. Are you a crow quill kind of guy, or?
Actually looking at this, like I'm obviously like I'm very impressed, but honestly kind of stresses me out. It's just like there's just a lot, and I think for me at least, in terms of my style, whatever that is, I don't know. I try to like make drawing, because drawing, I don't know. For me, drawing can be very stressful, so I try to make it as fun as possible. So just anything that kind of just like shapes or images that like bring me joy, and this is just so much work. Like I don't know, like I would not be able to survive making editorial comics or political comics in this style. And it would just wear me out. So I try to like, I don't even think even like look at other like this sort of single panel style. Like really, it's a lot. I mean, I'm impressed, but like I don't try to tiptoe my way there or anything like that.
It's funny that you say that, because I feel like sometimes I'm the opposite, where I like love stressing out about like the details of things and like just fill a whole freaking page worth of like Easter eggs. And I think I love that about this image, and it is a little stressful, but I think maybe it's because it's like, maybe that's the intent. Like it's a disgusting city and it makes me unhappy. But I don't know if I could draw in this style, but I do love like little details and Easter eggs, and just even going back to like the wasteland stuff for the nib, like having Gorm and Tinsel just like tucked away, like repeatedly as an Easter egg. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, I do love drawing all those like background details and the rubble. And whenever I do one, it always takes me longer because they're usually like 6 panels, and there's if it's just like Trump talking, it's easier to get out. But I used to do more one panels like earlier in my career, and I would try to make them pretty detailed and put a bunch of background gags and Easter eggs and stuff in them. I mean, I wasn't like working on this level, but it was fun to do. But now it's like I do one a week, and I'm running the nib, and I have kids, and I'm like, I can't be like the wasteland stuff is enough. I mean, that's detailed enough, but.
Well, being succinct and economical is also important in a cartoon, because you kind of like, there's stuff that you got to have, like, right? You're assuming that your reader has certain level of knowledge about a particular issue so that they'll get the jokes, right? But then also you need to like communicate it like very, very quickly and easily. And that's like, if you have something that's really detailed like this, I think that can be, I guess that's a whole different thing, right?
Well, I think it's, playing into the point of the, like, so much of local cartooning, I think, is getting across your point as economically as possible in so many ways. And here it plays so nicely into the point that the artist is making, from their perspective of like, I want to draw this dirty city or whatever. So it really, they're trying to overwhelm the viewer with what's happening. So like, it kind of has to be like this. But I think, if you're doing something else, like you don't necessarily need to do this level of detail. As much as I do personally like looking at comics like this in terms of just like, you can spend a long time with a single image, which you don't get to do that much anymore.
Well, and a lot of this type of stuff, was created for print. And
this is really Mad Magazine to me. It kind of reminds me of also like Tom Bunk a little bit. Yeah. Who's still working? He still works at this level of detail.
Comics. This is like predates Instagram and everyone being distracted by their phones, and you could like get a magazine and actually read it. And, like,
we're all looking at our phones, man. Everyone just put down their phones and look at each other, read a magazine.
Okay, I will say that I am a little like, what is it? I do get like not freaked out, but it's like I noticed that this is in a rectangular format, and I have only drawn in square format because of Instagram. So I'm like, oh wow, a rectangular canvas. That's pretty cool.
How are they cropping that later?
Yeah, exactly. They're gonna lose like.
Scott McCloud is screaming at his television.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing now, and I think we should open it up for questions or comments if we've got any coming in. I know that we've got Jennifer from MOA out there. She said she would send some stuff through. Oh wait, something came up. So Sharon De La Cruz says, how do political comics differ online than in print? And it's not just the obvious medium differences, but if you can speak to difference in audience, content, etc.
It's a lot easier to get yelled at online. A lot easier. They've really made it very easy for people to yell at you online. Very easy.
Younger people are also more likely to be reading political comics like nib stuff. I don't know. I don't know many older people reading the nib stuff from personal experience, but I think that actually the medium does play a role in that.
In terms of like, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking quickly, just like sort of about from like the perspective of the artist, at least for me, I think for something like print, like you can, as some folks have mentioned, like you can take time to like look closer at an image when it's in print, and like but if you're like scrolling through a phone, for me, like when I try to like make a comic, I'm almost like competing with memes in my brain.
Sure.
If that makes sense, like trying to do something meme. So I mean, like I think it's about with regards to stuff online. There needs to be like that same kind of speed and point, as opposed to something that's done on print, which can be digested.
Yeah, people it drives me a little nuts because I'm a million years old, but sometimes people will call comics that we post a meme, and it makes me to cut off my hands and quit. So.
It's actually really funny that you mentioned that you kind of feel like you're competing with memes, because I'll be sitting there drawing and then someone on Twitter will just post like a crappy Photoshop of like Trump on a toilet or something, and then it'll be like just as funny, right? And I'm just sitting here, I'll be drawing Trump on the toilet, but then this person just like did it in 2 seconds, and because of its jankness, it's as funny as if, like really thinking about the joke. But I think the one thing political cartoons have over a meme is that they could be more clever, I guess. Although I've seen pretty clever memes. It's just like, I don't know, could we argue that political memes are a different art form?
Yeah.
It's too abstract.
I think for me, it like drives like being in competition with that sort of content, or I hate talking about content, but like being in competition with that sort of stuff, like in people's headspace and what they're reading is, for me, it makes me want to like drill down more to like, the sort of like root causes of things, and less about like quick reaction things that you can just like tweet off instead. It makes me want to go crazier with what I'm drawing, because you can only Photoshop so much. Like if the toilet is flying in place or whatever, not whatever, sort of, if we're sticking with the toilet thing that we all love. Yeah.
What do you reckon, Matt?
I don't know if I have anything new to add. There was there's another question now. That was I don't want to add more.
There's a question here. Any thoughts on the Mayor Trump painting by Dana Schultz that sold for $750,000?
No.
Can I have that money instead? That's my response.
So I need to getting this. Is this a story? I forget.
I'm looking at the painting now.
I haven't heard of this story.
I don't know. I kind of like the colors in his face. It looks cool. Just kind of, I don't know, it's a painting.
That's pretty cool. I kind of like that politics has seeped into like that type of art world. Then I guess if political comics are like making that kind of money, like then I'm all for it, because I think that art world, like contemporary art or whatever, could benefit from being more actively political. Even though drawing a picture of Trump isn't really political, it's just kind of like.
Well, I think, you know, it's selling for whatever it was, $750,000. I mean, that's just, the fine art world is separate from the media world, and you know, it's two different things are happening, and a lot of cartoonists, you know, resent the value, the high value of art that is sometimes, you know, crappy, or you're like, why this is like triangle or whatever. I mean, it's like, you know, I respect a lot of fine art, but it's rich people buying objects that have a lot of value that they can usually resell for more value later. I mean, it's just a completely different, like you know, it's not comics. And obviously I wish there was a cartoonist who could make I don't know, even, you know, $100,000 a year for drawing like 75 political cartoons, or more or less or whatever. But you know, that's the reason why a painting sells for a ridiculous amount of money. Like there was a Banksy where he did a Monet, but it was like Banksy stuff where it was like there was like a discarded garbage in the river, you know.
Fucking got him. Oh man.
And it's
someone throwing the bouquet of flowers in the back.
It's
direct Monet.
You know what he titled it? Show me the Monet.
Ah,
I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
And someone bought it for like, I forget, but it was like over $5 million. It was a lot. And that's just like, you know, that's the fine art world. It's just like rich people buying.
It's an investment.
Yeah. It's like, well,
that's hilarious. I mean, that's like fan art. It's like really expensive fan art.
I mean, you got to get in on the. I mean, it's whether you want to call it a grift or whatever, but it's a different. Maybe they're smarter, you know, like Banksy. Like why draw political cartoons every day and post them on Twitter? Draw a Monet and put trash in it.
All right, I'll sell out. Bye, guys. No.
And then retire.
What if the toilet was a triangle?
Yeah.
Think about that.
When we talk, here's another question. Have you had any problems or conflicts with what you publish on the Nib, given that it's also an income source for you?
Problems or conflicts with what I publish, given that, I mean, no, I don't think so. I guess, I don't know. You know, I did a cartoon this week. That was probably the most over the top cartoon I ever drew in my life, maybe, where AOC was chopping Donald Trump's head in half with a sword. Pretty gruesome. And you know, I could not get that published anywhere else, and you know, probably wouldn't even publish it if someone else submitted it. I'd be like, I don't know. But I wanted to do it for the power issue. It's kind of an excuse to go over the top, and I guess you know, some people were upset by it, and it was clear that it could be like controversial or become a thing. But you know, sometimes we publish work. Chelsea's work, as you know, we get criticized for sometimes, you know, the left-wing stuff gets criticized.
There's haters.
Or the more liberal stuff gets criticized from the left. And that's so, like, you know, I guess you can like risk pissing off your audience if you go too far out, you know, but I don't know. What Larry and Matt, do you have anything to add to that?
I would say because we're a member-supported publication, like people are there for this stuff a little bit more. Like we're not looking for big advertising revenue. Like we're looking for, you know, for someone at home who likes cartoons to like subscribe to our magazine. Like that's like kind of a different, you know, does that make sense? Like it's a different revenue stream. So there's less corporate. We don't have to worry about corporate, like, you know.
Media companies and their weird ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think no one, if we were just publishing the same, you know, like, if it was just like, oh, here's my cartoon and it's a fly voting for Joe Biden, like, I don't know, I think people don't come to the mid so much for that stuff.
No.
So, like, I don't know, like, you know, in terms of like being financially impacted, I think people could pull their support or whatever, but you need a lot of people to pull their support, so we'd really have to screw up. In that case,
yeah, there's been people who have gotten mad and canceled their subscriptions over stuff, but I mean, it's definitely a small number that doesn't happen a lot. And I think a lot of the, you know, the online backlash, like when we do a comic and people start jumping on it for being too out there or too lib or too critical of Joe Biden, that most of them aren't like paying members or even necessarily daily readers, because especially on Twitter, you know, like once people start quote tweeting something, it just starts sending massive amounts of people of other people's audiences to be like, this sucks, this ain't it, chief. And then you're like, wow, we're getting like attacked by like 100 commenters, but it's like they're not like nib members.
Yeah.
I think Matt Bohr saying this ain't it, chief, is the highlight of my evening.
would you say that is it?
It is.
It is it. Yes.
Do we have any more questions? Do you usually have a very clear idea of your message and artwork before you start doodling an idea, or does it develop as you work?
I feel like I work backwards from a topic generally. It's like something is interesting to me for either I'm mad about it or I think there's something funny about it. Very rarely the second one. But like, oh, like, you know, like this week, yesterday, my comic was about, you know, like restaurants and COVID stuff. And it was like, oh, I want to do something about this thing. And then I'll start thinking about it. And sometimes it's like a fully formed idea that just pops into my brain. And sometimes it's something I got to bang my head against the wall for 12 hours. But I always start with like the thing I want to talk about that particular week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess I always write my comics as text, and I don't sketch or I never sketch or draw anything outside of my comics. So I just, you know, I don't know. They go together, but I don't think of the visuals first necessarily. It's not like, because there's usually not gag related, or even if there's physical stuff happening, I just think of it as, yeah, it's always text writing, and the art is the easiest part and the fun part. It's like the harder part is trying to come up with something that tracks over 4 panels.
Mm.
Like
it's got to track.
Like even submitting to the nib, I remember sometimes I would just like finish the comic and then like send it, and then other times I would do kind of like a screenwriting where I send like panel 1 image, the written like campers around a fire, and then 2, this is the text that'll be in the panel. So I feel like working with you guys have kind of co-opted just that screenplay type of setup before I even start to draw anything out.
Yeah. Well, we usually ask people to send in ideas as like writing or like sketches. We don't like, rather than completed artwork, just because it's you know, we don't want people to do a lot of work if we're not going to accept their submission, because it's kind of a jerk move to like expect completed artwork for no money, you know.
Oh yeah, we definitely don't do that.
Yeah, I would say it's very much, we don't want to make people work for free, unlike other comic publications that may or not rhyme with the Schnoo Schnorker.
Yeah. Erica Moen would like to know what comics you're almost proud of, whether you made it or edited it.
That's a good boy. Most comics most proud of, made it or edited it. Man, well, I'm not going to say my own work or anything. I mean, because trying to figure out what comic of my own I'm most proud of is, I don't know, but like definitely. Like, I don't know, I'm going to say like the death issue of the magazine as a whole, because it was like the first magazine we did and we spent a lot of time on it, and we were really like, had a really cohesive theme, and spent a lot of time like curating the pieces and the ideas, and it worked really well. And so I'm pretty proud of that, the death issue.
Yeah.
Ouch.
What about your
All right, I'll go.
Anybody?
I'm gonna go with. All right,
Matt.
I'm gonna try and not be. I don't know. It's hard to not just be like, oh, I'm gonna puff myself up here. But I don't know. I was pretty proud of. There was we do this series called The Response, where we get like artists to all answer one question. We did one a while ago that was all from trans artists, and I was really proud of that collection of comics and it going on the site. I did one myself, and I was very proud of doing that. It's actually a way that it came out to a lot of people in my life, which was a fun day for me to sit around watch people read it. Anyways, but that was a nice thing to be a part of and not just like my own thing.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't done a lot of collaboration work. So I am gonna be self-congratulatory and just say an individual piece. sorry, not
Really?
sorry.
Right, sure.
I think my favorite piece I've done was either the Black Wall Street comic for the Nib, which took me a lot of research and like a lot of time to write. Or honestly, like that really quippy Joe Biden meme where like he's handing out black cards, and I really like that one because just folks got mad, folks got pissed, and I was just like, gotta do it to him sometimes. So I think it's like a tie between like quippy stuff like that and the heavier stuff that I think deserves storytelling.
Niccolo. Quippy?
For me, I think there's one that was most recent that I did like maybe 2 months ago. It's a 6-panel. It's about it's time traveler goes back in time to stop his past self from tweeting something bad about the Democratic presidential nominee. That one
I loved
was
that one.
Oh, thank you so much. That I don't know. There was just something about that like kind of combined a lot of the things that I was interested in, like just like science fiction. There was like a whole Dragon Ball Z reference there for the Dragon Ball Z fans, and it was I don't know, like the ending also was just really really absurd. And I'm always just trying to reach that kind of level of humor. I don't always think I'm there, but this one just kind of came out really well, and I was just very proud of it. Just like kind of all of those different style ideas, things that I try to chase after just came together for that one.
That's so satisfying though. That's such a nice feeling if you're like it's all there. Like I got it. Yeah. I feel like I don't know if I'm supposed to answer this question, but I don't do very many like editorial cartoons. I do mostly actually in Australia I do a lot of gags for like union magazines and things like that, which is very different from what I do for the Nib. But in the Nib context, I'm probably most proud of my Reported Missing comic, which is comics journalism, and that won a bunch of awards and was like the biggest thing I've ever done to date. It's a true crime murder mystery type piece, 7 parts. Check it out if you've got an evening and you want to sit down and feel. It's actually probably a good one for like the month of October. Like we're looking at spooky things and creepy stuff. Like it's probably in there. Like what's it like to have your mum convicted of murder? I think probably it's hard for me to look back and go which piece am I most proud of editing, because at this point in time I've edited like over 1,000 comics journalism pieces for the Nib. So it's like a lot of comics. But so for me, it's like in the most recent ones that I'm probably really proud of is I worked with Ben Passmore on a piece recently about protest for Black Lives Matter, and that turned out really great. And like Ben is such an amazing person to work with. Like it was a real joy to work with him on that. And then also a piece that we just put out the other day from Victoria Lamasco, who's Russian, about the protests in Belarus. So 2 protest comics, I guess. Victoria Lamusco like smuggled herself across the border in the back of someone's car in order to draw the stuff that she saw there. And she's a really interesting person to work with because she comes from such a different cultural background, and like the things that she's interested in are like so far outside my realm of experience that it's just really. But I know about protesting, right? I know about, I've been to protests, like, it's like, how do you like, but like working with her on something like that is like really interesting and always like a good ride. So yeah, I feel like we're up. Our time is up. Did anyone? Were there any questions in the line there, Jennifer, that you really wanted us to answer before we wrap this up? Have you ever made / published a comic that became much more controversial than you were expecting?
Never.
Not one.
Yeah.
So many.
More controversial than you.
I would say totally.
Yeah.
Because this reminds me of something I made not for the Nib actually, but for another magazine, Current Affairs, and it was like huge campus illustration of like the conservative view of liberal campus, liberal arts school, and someone photoshopped the title from the comic, and then it started getting shared widely by conservatives first. I think like Steven Crowder shared it on his site, I was told, and then it blew up on Twitter, and then the liberals started taking over it, and it was kind of crazy and awesome and controversial in that I didn't think so many conservative people would vibe with it, but
that one still bounces across my feed sometimes, and they're like, "Look at this conservative cartoon." And every time I'm like, "No, it's just."
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I'm not
here.
I'm not Ben Garrison, I promise.
Yeah,
Please, I'm not.
Okay. Anyone else want to talk about their controversies?
Oh, I don't know what we've had a few controversial cartoons on the Nib. I mean, there was one with like Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. They were kind of like, I don't know what they were doing. They were like wrestling naked, and people started calling it out for being homophobic. And I was like, yeah, they kind of have a point. And we didn't like think of it that way. So that one was probably like the most where, it was sort of like a legitimate criticism. And there's a lot like that we mentioned where, sometimes people just get mad at comics, and it's fine because they just don't like it and don't like the message of it. During the Obama years, I had a lot of cartoons like that where I was critical of him, and like, yeah, stuff that I considered innocuous wasn't really going at him super hard even, but like, there'd just be like this thing and people would really latch onto it and, criticize it for criticizing him, or being, saying I was anti-Obama or helping Republicans, or criticizing the first Black president in a way that I shouldn't. And that wasn't a super fun time.
I've got a more pleasant and weird one, which was I did this very stupid comic a long time ago for like the Nib when it was on Medium that was like a map of America and all the bad weather stuff that happens. It is this dumb comic that I hate, that I drew in 45 minutes. But it for some reason very much persists online. Yeah. But it's like every region of America has like a bad thing happening to it with the weather, like wildfires or like snow or tornadoes or hurricanes or like soupy humid air or whatever. And I portray all of California as being on fire in it. And every time it goes around, I get 1 million people from San Diego that have to tell me that it's nice every day in San Diego 100% of the time. They have to tell me how nice San Diego is. And I'm like, I'm never going to San Diego now because everyone who lives there, in my estimation, is a psychopath.
You should draw a second version of that map, which I guess where the only thing, there's just like a little patch of land and it just says San Diego's.
San Diego? Everyone who lives there is very defensive. Like people get very mad that I said that San Diego, perhaps there might be fires nearby.
Hey, you're that cartoonist who said that thing.
Never
I
set
remember
foot in
you.
S-Town again is what I call it.
Nicola, what about you? What's your most controversial comic?
I think the one that just kind of I did one that was just like it was just a personal comic that eventually got I think the Nib republished it, but it was one about this fictionalized cartoon version of me like walking down the street and like hearing this person like kind of how am I gonna describe it? Kind of like trying to figure out like they basically the comic ends with this person going like, oh my god, humans are the virus, like in the context of like COVID-19, and like the cartoon version of me is like about to like throw a brick at them, just like, you know, just being upset that they said this, like, you know, not realizing all the other factors that are like causing these problems. And that's just like, I had that quick idea, I posted it on Instagram, and then it blew up on Twitter. I posted it on Instagram and Twitter, and then it blew up on Twitter. It got on Tumblr, where I don't even have a Tumblr anymore, and then Facebook. And that was just kind of like the moment I learned that like I'm not built for going viral. Like
You gotta have a strong skin.
it wasn't people were saying mean things. It was just it was the quantity, not the quality. Like I was like, you know, yeah, whatever, I'm an idiot, whatever, blah blah blah. But like it was just like, you're dumb, you're dumb, you're dumb. I'm like, oh my god, this needs to
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's like where I was at, you know, 12, 15 years ago. No.
It's funny because like I've talked to Matt Boers about like just like haters, you know, and like sometimes they don't agree with you, and I feel like I'm still, just because I'm getting used to political cartooning, like I like will read those comments and be like, damn, and it still gets to me, but then, you know, you always have to like turn that part off, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like when like very right-wing people are mad at me, I think it's fine.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's actually a success.
Yeah.
That's what it means though, right? If you get a lot of attention, that's a success, right?
Suppose.
Yeah. But I was going to say, like, this is something that all the people in the Wisconsin exhibition did not have to worry about because they did not have Twitter at the time. No haters. If someone saw, what would you do if you saw a cartoon in a newspaper you didn't like? Would you like photocopy it and send it to your friends with
I'd
like
get in a big club and I'd go to the cartoonist's house?
Yeah, like all those people in the front.
Letters to the editor, right?
Yeah.
Is that existing still?
Oh, yeah.
I guess it does. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you again to the Museum of Wisconsin Art for putting on this panel, and thanks to all the panelists here today, Matt Boers, Matt Lubchansky, Chelsea Saunders, Nicola Pizarro, and I'm Larry Harris. You can order the Nibs political cartoon anthology, The Wasteland, on our website, thenib.com, and you can check out the Wisconsin Funnies exhibition through to January 10, 2021 at their West Bend location and also downtown at St. Kate's Art Hotel in Milwaukee. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
The Wisconsin Humanities Council for sponsoring this virtual talk.
Nice.